Yo, what's up? We got another video here, but not by anyone we've watched before. Young Micro. I've never seen one of his videos that I know of, but this one looks pretty interesting, so I want to check it out. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and check it out. And if you like Micro's videos, go subscribe to him too later. Probably going to, if I like this. Your favorite YouTube channel is probably owned by private equity. Now, what does he mean by that?
YouTube, there's now a very good chance that a substantial share of your... If you spend long enough on YouTube, there's now a very good chance that a substantial share of your watch time is going to channels partially or fully owned by private equity. Major firms operating in this space have raised billions of dollars collectively from companies like SoftBank, Amazon, Disney, Goldman Sachs, and Blackstone, and they are using that money to acquire YouTube channels as strategic investments. According to my own analytics, where YouTube lets me see what my audience watches, some of these names should be familiar to you. Task and Purpose, Veritasium, Donut Media, Simple History, Fern, Fireship, Economics Explained, Mentor, Pilot, Futurism, Astrum, The Drive, and History Hit have all publicly been acquired by private equity. Outside of the nerd corner of YouTube, some of the biggest names in the space, including CoComelon, Colin and Samir, The Theorist, and Dude Perfect, have also all partially or completely been acquired. These are also only the acquisitions that we know about because they chose to be upfront with their audience.
So there could be more. Wait, since its inception has proven itself. Yeah, okay. Interesting.
There's no law requiring these deals to be publicly disclosed, and as you'll soon see, there are some really good reasons why they might want to keep it quiet. So why is this a problem? It's easy to say that private equity is just inherently bad, and to be fair,
necessarily.
It's had some problems. But that shouldn't be enough by itself. Instead, what you should know is why private equity firms have suddenly become so interested in YouTube channels, and what this will likely mean for the future of the content that you watch.
Because they got more funding, maybe. Who knows?
Big YouTube channels are really just businesses in the entertainment industry. Even completely independent creators still need to cover their own living expenses, and creating content does cost money. Film equipment, software, location shoots, perhaps a hired video editor, it all adds up. A lot of medium-sized creators barely scrape by, paying themselves fairly modestly. And in the interest of transparency, even this channel, which now has over 70,000 subscribers, has lost money in most months since I started it.
Dang.
Anyway, all of this can be fixed with scale. As creative brands grow, their revenue increases while their costs stay relatively stable. At a certain size, most of these channels can generate strong cash flows and predictable profits, which should make them desirable investable assets like any other business, right? Well, not exactly. These operations are incredibly risky, even by small to medium business standards. Most of them depend on a single platform for the majority of their revenue, and these platforms can ban, restrict, or moderate their content overnight, often with little to no explanation. SunnyV2 and about a dozen copycat channels have built their entire career on saying that the algorithm stopped recommending their content, because it genuinely happens so often.
How do you build your career on
top of that, most of these businesses depend on a single personality to host the content.
I guess oddly enough that works.
Behind the scenes. Human beings, especially those that share their lives online, can get burnt out.
Let me see what bros.
On a single personality to host the content, even if there's a larger team working behind the scenes. Human beings, especially those that share their lives online, can get burnt out, get embroiled in controversies, or just fall out of favor with an audience that outgrows them. Typically, the wealthy investors and lenders that give money to private equity firms for them to make their acquisitions would be scared away by these business fundamentals. But over the past 5 years, a few things have changed which kicked off the Great Buyout.
What's that?
The first major change was that creators demonstrated their ability to scale their own brands to generate profits beyond sponsored segments, audience donations, and integrated platforms. Some of these brands have been very successful.
Now the YouTube channel
Others
is like,
not so much. Even if Beast Burger and Prime Energy completely implode, they were a test case that showed that real brands can be launched through clowns on the internet.
clouds on
If
the
that initial
internet.
success
Well, I
could be
mean, they
paired with
can,
a
but
private
they're
equity
not
team
good.
that actually knew how to run a business,
At least that one
theoretically,
isn't.
then there would be some real money to be made. Another big push that's come from the fact that legacy media, which is large, centralized, rigid, and needs to be broadly appealing, is losing out to millions of individual creators who are
100%.
flexible, can make content specifically targeted to particular audiences without worrying about tarnishing the reputation of a gigantic media company. These companies now have to fight for advertiser dollars, which are being split over more mediums than ever. Now, this trend is nothing new. Google has been the largest advertising platform in the world for more than a decade now. But another threat these legacy businesses are facing is the competition for talent. A lot of people would rather operate their own YouTube channel over working on something like an old-school TV show. Investors in these companies are worried about these threats, and they're putting pressure on company
Threats?
leadership
That's a
to
threat?
do something about it.
Bob
One of the
Iger,
central
that's not a
focuses of
threat,
Netflix
bro.
Q1 memo to their investors was reassurance that they are not having any problems finding advertisers, and they presented a better opportunity to creators to make their show through them rather than produce it independently. Other legacy companies have started taking a simpler approach. If you can't beat them, buy them.
Join them. Oh, buy them.
Even if the business case is not that strong, a company like Disney giving a few $1 million to a private equity firm that specializes in
nothing.
acquiring YouTube channels lets their executives say that they are prepared for the threats that new media presents. Abusing
Threats is so
shareholders is
crazy.
often a lot more important to senior management than making genuinely good business decisions, especially when an investment of a few $1 million is actually quite cheap. Before around 2020, old-school media companies were still going about
Threat
this in
is
their
so
own
crazy.
old-school way. They would invest in
They can
traditional
both
companies that
coexist.
just happen to have a new media,
They just do
digital-first
different things.
focus. Think of businesses like Vice, BuzzFeed, Mashable, and Vox. These brands would build their own IP and primarily rely on platforms like Facebook and YouTube to distribute it, but behind the scenes, they were still operated like traditional media companies, with a lot of staff, city offices, and all the expenses that come with them. Which meant these were terrible businesses. They would burn cash, and they were much more expensive to acquire in the first place. Vice Media was once valued at over $5.5 billion. That's an unreasonable valuation for an organization that primarily distributed through a YouTube channel and a Facebook page.
Bankruptcy.
These are pages that get similar monthly viewership to Atriox's daily Clips channel. Now, clearly these are not the same thing, but one is obviously
Yeah.
much cheaper to operate than the other,
Yeah.
on top of being
The
generally
overhead
more
for that.
advertiser-friendly. The channel Modern NBA did a deep dive into these companies and their respective failures. He did a better job than I could ever do, so instead of
That's
retreading the
advice.
same details, I'll just leave a
Did
link to
they?
that video if you're
I thought
interested
they were
in
still
that comedy
relevant.
of errors. But
Dang, I
the
kinda
point
wanna see
is,
that
the
video
legacy media
now.
companies that wanted to protect
Maybe we'll
themselves
queue that
against
up for the
a
next
wave
one.
of social
Hold on,
media
let me make a little note real quick, or I'll just search it up in another tab. Let's
by
bookmark
throwing
that.
money
Why Vice fell off or don't exist? It doesn't exist. Why Vice doesn't exist? Yikes. Where is it? What? Why Vice and what was the other one? BuzzFeed. Went extinct. I was completely not looking at the other video, the right one.
BuzzFeed and Vice were
Alright. We're back.
at it needed a new solution. Instead of investing in companies
Oops.
to build an online audience, they could just invest in private
There we
equity
go.
firms that would buy out people who already had an audience. And
Okay.
then there's the private equity industry itself. Over the past 20 years, the scale of private equity operations
Hold on,
has
let me check
increased from
something.
less than a
Okay, we're good.
measly 20 millions. And then there's the private equity industry itself. Over the past 20 years, the scale of private equity operations has increased from less than a measly $1 trillion to over $12 trillion today in America alone, according to Preqin, a data firm who are themselves owned by BlackRock. With this
Of
much
course.
money to manage, they've simply run out of normal businesses to acquire. New private equity managers who want to start their own funds are entering a very saturated market, and one of the best ways to differentiate themselves is to invest in businesses that nobody else understands. According to public releases, the biggest firms in the YouTube space have collectively raised about $2 billion and borrowed an additional $2 billion on top of that. So it's still quite a small part of the overall private equity market, but that's still more than enough money for it to become an increasingly large part of your home screen. Now, for the creators themselves, this is a perfectly understandable decision to make. Online fame can literally collapse at any second for any reason, so if they can sell part or all of their channel and secure that bag, I don't think anybody should begrudge them for doing it. But it will inevitably change their content slowly but surely over time. One of the things that made YouTube channels a viable
That's why I don't
investment
watch
in
the
the
big
first place
YouTube channels.
is their
I kind
low
of
overheads.
get that vibe.
A team of 2 or 3 people with off-the-shelf equipment can produce content that would have taken a whole studio at legacy media companies. But when a channel is acquired by a private equity company, they become the overhead. The analysts, business development managers, strategists, and acquisition teams all need to be paid as well. This means that to maintain profitability, the channel needs to make more revenue, which means more videos, more questionable sponsorships, more products.
monetization practice.
The investors in these firms also want to see consistent and continuous growth, which means they need to play the YouTube game with low-risk videos that are guaranteed to do well with the algorithm, accompanied by hyper-optimized thumbnails. Ultimately, what this means for you is that the content you watch is going to become more generic and safe within the parameters of what will optimize retention. This also works with a private equity business strategy
That's why I
called
don't watch
rolling
a lot.
up, where multiple acquired channels
Like,
will
honestly,
share management resources with one another. So if one thing works well for one channel, it'll be rolled out amongst all the channels in a portfolio. Now, independent
'Cause they
YouTubers
kinda do
are
give that vibe of,
absolutely
like,
guilty of this as well. I've personally spent many
this is
late
like
nights
a
making minor
business now
adjustments
as
to my
opposed to, like,
thumbnails
it's
to help my
making
videos do
content,
just
you
a
know?
little
And
bit
sometimes it's
better.
entertaining, right? But it's like,
But without a bloated team that needs to be paid and investors that need to be kept
Plus a lot of the
happy,
sheen.
independent creators do have a little bit more leeway
Or just
to
never
take
had
some
it
creative
from me in
risks
general.
from time to time. Rolling up and hyper-optimization is only going to accelerate a trend of every single piece of content on YouTube.
I don't even know what I didn't even. I missed what he said. What did he say? Rolling up? What does it
With one
mean?
another. So if one thing works well for one channel, it'll be rolled out amongst all the channels in a
Oh, okay.
portfolio. I've
Fair
kept
enough.
happy time. Rolling up and hyper-optimization is only going to
Just hit
accelerate a
rolling up.
trend of every single piece of content on YouTube moving towards the same generic but
Not every
effective
single, because a
formula.
lot of people aren't going to do that.
This is
A lot
amplified
of
by
people
another
actually
problem
enjoy
that
making
comes
the
when the channel
content that
turns
they're
into an
making.
asset, which is
And
that they
they, like,
typically want to
value
move
doing it
away from the
themselves.
focus on a single creator. For more than a decade, a channel like Veritasium has been focused on the host, Dr. Derek Muller. For a lot of regular viewers, Dr. Muller is Veritasium, but if you've been watching the channel recently, you'll notice that new hosts are slowly being introduced, so the whole operation isn't as singularly focused on one personality. The business case is that it cuts
didn't know
down
that.
on
I've
something
only
called
seen, like, their little
human risk,
documentaries.
which is where the entire operation depends on one single person to continue. Since Veritasium isn't actually Derek's business anymore, there's nothing to stop him restarting a new channel from scratch or just retiring, since presumably he made millions of dollars from the acquisition in the first place. For other channels, this has already happened. If you search "why I left blank" in the YouTube search bar, there are endless videos from former personalities
Matt
behind
Pat
big
retired.
channels talking
I
about why
watched
they're
that video.
suddenly showing up on a completely new
Yeah.
channel. A common theme among most of them is that it wasn't their channel anymore. Most of these splits seem pretty amicable, often with the old channel commenting words of support under the video itself. But obviously, this is still a real problem behind the scenes. After losing their host, a lot of these channels have suffered from reduced viewership, and people are far
Makes sense,
less
'cause
likely
the
to
content
directly
changed.
support channels through merch or paid memberships when they know it's really just a faceless investment firm on the other side of the transaction. As this industry matures, we're more likely to see more onerous, non-compete contracts from acquired channels and a continuation of a trend towards commercially viable, predictable, and safe content over the unique and creative content that made YouTube so compelling in the first place. Now, go and watch this video next to understand the real reason every
Hey, you
sponsor
know
you see
what?
on YouTube is kinda terrible. Oh, and make sure to
Why YouTube sponsors are mostly terrible. That does sound like an interesting video. I actually did like this video. Young Micro. Let's see. I'll drop a sub. You know, I like this video. I enjoyed this. This was cool. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. Hey, if you liked the video, go ahead and like it, comment, subscribe. Go check out Micro. And I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. I'm gonna check out this one after this, one of the sponsors. But Bye.